Hello everybody, welcome to our e-learning sessions for second prep. Our session for today is a novel, David Copperfield, chapter 17 and 18. Now the name of our chapter is I Fall in Love and I'm in seventh heaven. In seventh heaven means I'm so happy. Now let's see what happened in these two chapters. In slide number 3, Mr. Spinlow invited David to stay from Saturday to Monday at his house, and David accepted his invitation. When David and Mr. Spinlow arrived home, they entered the hall. Then they turned to a room where Mr. Spinlow introduced his daughter Dora and her special friend to David. David fell in love immediately with Dora. When he saw her, he became as a captive or a slave. He loved Dora Spinlow with all his heart and soul. David observed a well-remembered voice when he heard, I have seen Mr. Copperfield before. Who was that voice? The special friend was Miss Murdstone. In slide number 5, Mr. Spinlow told David that since Dora unhappily had no mother and Miss Murdstone had agreed to become her companion and protector, David was afraid that Miss Murdstone may tell Dora things against him. She may tell Dora bad things about him. As the chances of life have brought us together again, I suggest we consider ourselves distant acquaintance. Distant acquaintance means that we know each other in a very slight way. We don't know each other too much. Do you agree to this? Now, who said these words? Miss Murdstone said that. David said that he would never forget that she and Mr. Murdstone treated him cruelly and his mother with great unkindness and rudeness. However, he agreed to what she suggested. The next morning, David met Dora and told her that she was out very early. Dora said that it was so stupid at home and Miss Murdstone was so absurd and she talked such nonsense. Dora added that her dog could protect her a great deal better than Miss Murdstone, and that means she doesn't need Miss Murdstone to protect her. They began to wander around the garden. Wander around the garden means to walk around the garden, and David tried his best to impress her. Impress her means to make her love him. The next slide. David and Mr. Spinlow departed. Departed means they left early Monday morning for London. In the office, Mr. Spinlow told David that Dora's birthday would be in a week's time and invited him to join them for a picnic in the country. In preparation for this great event, David behaved in a completely absurd way. He bought himself a tie that was in very bad taste. He bought also boots that were very painful to wear. He bought a huge bunch of flowers. He hired a horse and drove to Dora's house carrying the flowers inside his hat. In the next slide, when David arrived, Dora was in the garden with her best friend, Miss Miles. They came to a green spot on a hill covered with soft grass, and there were shady trees. It was a beautiful landscape. However, David was jealous, and he became upset and angry when one of the men, Red Whisker, sat at Dora's feet. He went off alone among the trees, and then he saw Dora and Miss Miles coming towards him. Mr. Copperfield, you are being boring, said Miss Miles, and Dora, you are being boring too. Miss Miles told David and Dora not to allow a small thing like that or a small misunderstanding like that to spoil the flowers of spring, to spoil the relationship. Miss Miles invited David to her house and told him that Dora would be there. David went to Miss Miles' house and met Dora there. He finally told Dora that he loved her. very much, and they were engaged. Here we have some questions in slide number 8. Let's answer them together. How did David met Dora, and how did he feel about her? David met Dora at her house when Mr. Spenlow invited him to stay with them from Saturday to Monday. David immediately fell in love with Dora when he saw her, and he became a captive and a slave, and he loved Dora with all his heart and soul. Who was the person that David met surprisingly with Dora, and what was her job? The person was Miss Murdstone, and her job was Dora's companion and protector. Number 3. I have seen Mr. Copperfield before. Comment. Who said these words? Now, these words were said by Miss Murdstone when Mr. Spenlow introduced her to David when he went to their house. Number 4. As the chances of life have brought us together again, I suggest we consider ourselves distant acquaintances. Do you agree to this? Comment. Now, these words were said by Miss Murdstone to David when they met each other at Mr. Spenlow's house. She asked David to consider themselves as relatives and asked him if he agreed to this. The next slide, number 5. What was Dora's opinion about Miss Murdstone? Now, Dora thought that Miss Murdstone was so absurd and talked nonsense. She thought that her dog could protect her a great deal better than Miss Murdstone. Number 6. What was David's arrangement for Dora's birthday? Now, in preparation for Dora's birthday, David bought himself a tie that was in a very bad taste, boots that were very painful to wear, and a huge bunch of flowers. He hired a horse and rode to Dora's house carrying the flowers inside his hat. He behaved in a completely absurd way. Mr. Copperfield, you are being boring. Comment. These words were said by Miss Miles to David when they were on the hill because David was upset and angry and went along alone among the trees. She told him not to be boring and not to spoil the happy time they were spending together, Dora and David. And this is the end of the chapter. Thanks for listening to me. Hope that you enjoy it, and see you soon.